All right, everybody, we're back with a new show at the NFL Power Rankings. It's week 4. We had a pretty interesting week last week. What you think, Jamal?
Yeah, yeah, it was a little interesting.
Yeah, how things change so fast, because you know what my saying is about the NFL: not for long is what it stands for. Because last week I think we had Dallas, we had San Francisco, we had Philadelphia, we had the Saints. Um, who was our 15?
It was Buffalo, I think. Was it Buffalo?
Now I don't think Buffalo was in there. There's somebody
Or
else
was it
was in there.
Baltimore?
Well, Baltimore is our sleeper. But but it is going to be a little movement this week, because a couple of teams did go out of our top 5. And, I got a comment last week on our video last week because, it was our first NFL Power Rankings at Two Top Sports. Somebody named California Girl, but she was like, how can you put Dallas ahead of San Francisco? They always beat them in the playoffs or whatever, But I stand, last week we did tell everybody that we wasn't ranking the top 5. We was just kind of got a top 5. But I made the executive decision. California Girl made me do it. So we're going to number our top 5 this week. So number 1, I think Miami is on fire. What do you think?
Oh yeah, best team in the NFL right now, in my opinion.
And that's why we got them as number 1. I mean, they had so much. They could probably still be scoring if the game was still going. I mean, and I did that reel, on our page week 1. After week 1, I was talking about how their chemistry was, their scheme, and how they just seemed to love playing with each other, and that's showing. Because there's 3-0 teams right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think we got Miami, we got Philadelphia,
and San Fran,
and San Fran. So it'd be easy to put them top 1, 2, 3, and that's what we done. But Miami, they just, to me, are going to be a juggernaut. It's one of those teams that's kind of, you kind of saw it a little bit last year, but they're just basically coming out of nowhere is what everybody will say. But, people that watch sports knows what they've been doing over the last couple of years to get together. But I will say one thing, we talked about last week, I think, about Buffalo. If they go to Buffalo in the playoffs, it's going to be hard for them in the cold weather. But you know where Miami goes this week, right?
Not mistaken.
They go to Buffalo.
Oh yeah, it is Buffalo. It is the Buffalo
this
game.
Weekend. But I think one thing that favors them, you know what the weather's going to be? 74 and sunny. So, because we're still in September.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think Miami's going to have a really good chance to beat them. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think Buffalo they might give them a little run for their money, but yeah, Miami's been having their way with everybody, especially my team.
Yeah, right. I mean, yeah, we want to talk about who your team is today. I'll let you slide on that. But, Buffalo's been getting some momentum. They struggled in week 1. Josh Allen threw a couple of interceptions. I think he was a little excitable. But then they seemed to get it together the last 2 weeks. I mean, like Mario, which I'm probably going to have for a podcast tomorrow. His team's Washington, I mean. So he's kind of crying this week, too, because Buffalo put a whipping on them.
Pray for that young man.
So what do you think about the long-term prognosis? I'll tell you one other interesting stat I noticed, reading the feeds this week is, in Cincinnati, Burrow, like he's going to come back and he's going to be relatively healthy for now. But I mean, they don't fix that offensive line, so it makes them dangerous, you know. But one thing I noticed, Tua's only been sacked one time in 3 weeks.
Offensive line been
So what
playing.
that tells me, and what that tells me is, you know, last year he had his concussion problems, right? And but obviously this year, they got the offensive line ready to protect him. You know, I mean, because he's only been sacked one time. You know, why don't a team like Cincinnati say, "This is my franchise player. We got to take care of him."
But
I mean,
those are two very different locations. As we all know, Cincinnati is not the
right,
most glamorous place in the world, and Miami, more money, more, probably better ownership. The Cincinnati
right,
ownership, they're known for not like really investing anything outside of skill players, really. Like, but
mm-hmm,
like as everybody else knows, like offensive line is pretty much the most important thing in football. Your O line and your D line
right,
outside of your quarterback and receivers, maybe. And you
mm-hmm,
probably need a good cornerback, but all the battle, as they say, is won in the trenches, and you need a good O
yeah.
line.
And then you know, there's another quarterback that's only been sacked one time, and that's Patrick Mahomes. So I mean, so it's no mystery that they won a Super Bowl last year, and it seems like they're starting to get their momentum
Yeah,
again. And Miami is 3-0. I mean, you know, there's no surprise to me. All right, our second best team is San Francisco. You know, we could have easily made that Philadelphia, I think. But who do you think has been more dominant so far, San Francisco or Philadelphia?
I would say San Francisco. Just a very,
Yeah.
very physical team. They just kind of like just punch you in the mouth, like, and dare you to do something about it, really. And they just run
Mm-hmm.
the ball effectively. Got Christian McCaffrey, got that solid
Yeah, I think he's
defense.
leading the league in rushing right now after week
Yeah,
3.
they got a fearsome defense, pretty good O line. Just a very physical team. They just come in, they just push people around, really, to be honest with you.
Right. You know, and just one thing, you know, I love McCaffrey, and I think we said last week on the show that McCaffrey would be the one that'll help him win the Super Bowl. I tell you, you know, we got the top 1 and 2 teams, AFC, NFC. I would love to see a San Francisco Miami Super Bowl. That would
That
be
would
an
be pretty
interesting
interesting.
Super Bowl because you know, I mean, San Francisco's got a really good defense, like you said, they're really a physical team. They can obviously run the
Mhm.
ball. Um, And I ain't too sure about Miami yet on their running game because I think I don't know. They had the one guy
I
last
think
week had like
I'm about to say,
240
I
yards.
think my team is they're a little sure.
Yeah. Or you know, and your opponent helps you a lot and everything. I think you know because I mean everybody always makes something out. I mean, one week for one thing, we hadn't had an undefeated team in 30 years. So I think it's my responsibility as somebody, let's call me a pundit, and we'll call you a pundit, but we don't sell out a team over one bad game,
Yeah.
especially if they're 2-1, you know, because there ain't been nobody undefeated. I mean, you're going to lose sometimes. That's just a reality. Um, and I don't see nobody competing with San Francisco in that division. Where, of course, on the Miami, you got Buffalo, you know, and we've talked about that. And, you know, I think this week's going to be a really interesting week. We're going to see how Miami, because that's going to be a rough hole to go down there in Buffalo,
Yeah.
you know, because that's a loud stadium. They're rolling. Them fans are passionate. You know, they've been going on for 30,
I
40
think they got
years.
a I think they got a little revenge on their minds though. They got beat by Buffalo in the playoffs last year. Didn't have Tua because he was obviously hurt,
Right,
and still kind of gave them a run for their money, in Buffalo.
right.
So I think they got a little get back on their mind. So it should be interesting.
And I think you're probably right about that. All right, so we had Miami, we have San Francisco, then we had Philadelphia. How do you think Philadelphia is doing? I know they're 3-0, but I don't think they played anybody yet.
Yeah.
I think they beat New England. Who else did they beat?
Mm. I think it was. Did they play Washington? Was it Washington?
Yeah, they beat Washington, but I don't think they've played a hard big game yet. I'm not too sure. For some reason, I can't put my finger on Philadelphia. There's something I think's coming with them. I just don't think they're going to be as dominant. Now, I could be wrong, which that wouldn't be the first time. But what do you think?
Offensively, they're not clicking as they're not on the same page as they were last year. The O line is still probably the best O line in football. The defense is definitely still there because they got defensive players everywhere, pretty much
Right.
everywhere. But yeah, offensively, it still looks a little chippy, a little ugly.
Because I think you need balance. I mean, you got to get that running game going a little bit. It's got to show up to take the pressure, off your quarterback, so don't have to try to be so dominant or bring you from behind. Ball control is probably the most underrated in the fans' mind thing in football. Because if you can control time on the clock and, you can keep your defense rested and stuff, you're going to win more games. That's just reality. All right. So we got Miami. We got San Francisco. We got Philadelphia. And we had a couple teams drop out. I want to say right now Dallas is one of them. They got it handed to them by Arizona, which I think that's always a big game anyway. And I think Arizona's a little bit better than people think they are. Which, I mean, except for the blowout, in Buffalo and for Washington last week and Miami and Denver, you don't see very many big blowouts anyway. I mean, the NFL, I think they say it's decided by an average about 3.5 to 4 points a game is your average margin of victory. I ain't saying, which I think that Miami Denver game might have skewed that number right now. Yeah, but teams are closer than you think. I mean, because one thing, everybody's got pride. And, you read in the newspaper, Dallas is coming to town and they're really going to beat you this week. And they start reading that, and that plays on their heart. It plays on their, I mean, they're professional athletes too, and they are successes. So they're going to take that personal, and you're going to, and, I think that's kind of like Colorado. It's all the media talk, all the media talk. If you walk that walk, you go into a city or a stadium, they're coming for you. Because for one thing, the media has been talking, because you got to turn out all that noise. And everybody is saying, oh my God, Dallas is probably the best they've been in 30 years. I mean, Jerry Jones, like I said on Happy Hour, was sitting there saying, this is the year we're going to get it done. And right, and Arizona took it personal. Because I noticed when they was playing Washington did beat them early in the season, Arizona. But I could tell they were playing hard. I could tell they were playing together. Because I think right before the season, everybody's saying this is going to be the first team to lose every game. But, and they said, no, we're not. I mean, we're men, we're professionals too. And we're going to play hard. And the Kyler Murray thing, I'm not sure on his status, but I think they have a pretty good roster. I think they got a lot of speed, and I think they got some good athletes. I mean, and speed kills. I mean, so Dallas went in and they got their butt handed to them. Plus, they lost Diggs. I think it'll take them a week or two to get their defense back together. I think it'll still be good. Might not quite as be as dominant because you're missing a Pro Bowl player. But so what do you think about Dallas slipping a little bit? Do you think that's going to be the norm, or you think they're going to get it back together?
hard to replace. Like you said, hard to replace Stephon Diggs.
Mm-hmm.
The defense still, got a lot of guys that can get it done. And offensively, I'm not really sure about them. Not really sure about them yet. Dak still has a couple question marks about him, and he seems like he still has a bit of a turnover problem. A little bit of a turnover problem.
Well, and and in his defense, we're 3 games in. He's only had 1 interception, but that interception against Arizona, he threw in a triple coverage. I mean, I think even anybody could see that he shouldn't have thrown that ball. So I don't think you want to put Dak where he's playing from
Yeah.
behind, he's trying to play catch up, and he's trying to force the ball.
When you have to really make plays, I think that's a little too much pressure. When the defense is when he's pretty much leaning on the defense, getting good field position, kind of mixing the runs and throws. I think that's when he's at his best.
Yeah, and I agree. And I don't know what the click is for him. I mean, why he's struggling so much with that. I just don't get it. But back to Kansas City. I mean, that was our number 4 team because we were going to take Dallas out. Just like the Chiefs are getting their momentum back. I mean, they have Taylor Swift in the stands. I mean, they got it rolling now. I mean, TikTok, here they come.
The Swifties.
I mean, yeah, they got the Swifties. I mean, if nothing else, that should increase their fan base. I mean, because there's a lot of Swifties out there. But all jokes aside, Patrick Mahomes just keeps being Patrick Mahomes. And I think Patrick Mahomes is kind of like the anti-Dak Prescott.
Oh, yeah.
If you want to see how a quarterback should play and come from behind games and all that, look at Patrick Mahomes.
Definitely.
I mean, because how many times he done it?
Definitely Steph Curry, like, in a way that just unimprovised.
Yeah, and I'll take that analogy with you. And he's got, they got, what's the defensive end that just came back? What's his name?
Chris Jones.
Yeah, Chris Jones. They got him back. And, Kelsey, you got that tight end, one of the best tight ends ever. Andy Reid, I mean, because, I saw somebody said the other day that Andy Reid was in the playoffs 4 or 5 years before Patrick Mahomes even got there. So, I mean, there is a system in place. Andrew Reid has been coaching a while, and I think he knows when to really push and coach and really kind of set back and just let them run things.
I think he was.
That's how he wants.
He was always looking for that guy that can really let his offense go. Right. I think when he had Alex Smith, he had a guy that can, be smart, make high IQ decision and plays.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he, wanted to push that ball downfield. With the team he had, it was years ago, back when it was like Tyreek and Kelsey, and it was young and up and coming.
Mm-hmm.
And Patrick Mahomes really takes the top off of everything. It's kind of like that, like I said, that Steph Curry effect. You put him in, and everything just uplifts everything.
Right, because all the attention goes to him. I mean, and a lot of times somebody's been doing something a long time, whether it's music or professional sports or whatever. They'll see what they want to do in their mind. They just ain't got the pieces to do it. And I think Andy Reid is in that. I think he's been doing it so long, he's got it all in his head. He's just got to have the players to execute it. And once he's got the players to execute it, it's just like world class. Then you start to see, well, this is why he did this, or this is why he wants that. Because once he got the pieces, it all started to come together. So, I mean, I don't know what the power rankings will do next week, but I think a couple of interesting things we talked about, the last couple of weeks of power rankings. One reason Dallas is going to, Well, they might be playing at home, but New England's coming. So Ezekiel Elliott, first time going against the Cowboys since they've been
Would be
gone.
interesting.
So that could be a hard game for him, because if Ezekiel comes out and has 125 yards rushing or 2 touchdowns, I don't know. You know, I totally believe in their defensive coordinator in Dallas. I kind of question McCarthy. You know, I mean, that's I thought he looked like he was doing really good to play calling, but I don't know if they can handle that pressure, you know, because Ezekiel comes out and has a big game and stuff like that, and New England gets the lead, and then that's going to put Dak back in that position to try to force it and try to win a game. And I just don't know what's missing there. Something is missing, but I just don't know what it is. And then we got to Buffalo, Miami. You know, Miami's going to Buffalo. So our power ranking is going to be doing a little bit of interesting things this week. I'm not sure what the rest of the schedule is. I was going to look at it tonight, you know, so we can do another podcast maybe this week. But those are 2 big games, I think, of, you know, the top 6 or 7 teams. Okay, so number 5, you know, they struggled week 1, but they've been really good the last couple of years. New Orleans, they lost to Green Bay. And I will say one thing, because somebody said something to me about how we have New Orleans in our top 5. You know, for one thing, they were 2-0. You know, 2, I think they got a quarterback, and with their schedule, I think I think they're going to make the playoffs. So if they win the division, you know, that automatically puts them in the power rankings, because so I mean, I think power as the season goes on is going to be who do we think's the best, you know, can win games. But I think New Orleans, for one thing, before going into Green Bay the other day, they went 10 games not allowing 20 points. Okay. They went up in that game 17-0. They looked like they were going to put it on Green Bay, but then Derek Carr went down. Okay. And that was at the end of the first half, but they had a 17-0 lead, and it didn't look like Green Bay was going to show up. And I think that took a lot of air out of their sails, or whatever you want to say with that, when Derek Carr went down, because in that you're in Green Bay, and Jordan Love, I don't know if you watched him a lot, but he looks pretty good this year.
He's not bad.
Now, in a couple of years, I think he could be really good. You know, but playing in Green Bay, you know, your quarterback goes down, and then Green Bay started to get some momentum, and then New Orleans couldn't match them. Now, New Orleans did lose the game 17-18, I think. But you think that defense still for real. They still only allowed 18 points in Green Bay. So that's the 11th game in a row that they've been under 20 points. That defense still for
Kamara
real.
was also suspended, and they get him back. And they get him back, I think, this upcoming week. He was suspended 3 games, so that's a whole nother element. So taking a little more pressure off a Carr, he's gonna feel a little more comfortable, and you'll really get to see the offense pick up. While that defense is still playing well, it's gonna add a couple more points onto the scoreboard. So they're probably gonna look even better than what they already been looking like in that weak NFC South division. We're pretty much the only team that seems a bit of a threat, is somewhat of a threat, is Tampa Bay. And Atlanta. I think Atlanta won that first couple games, but they don't really look like they're gonna
Atlanta
pose
just lost her 2-1.
They don't look like they're gonna be a long-term threat. Neither does Tampa.
I don't think so either. So then we go to the other side of things. We're taking New Orleans out, and we got Buffalo now, which Buffalo struggled in week 1. You know, Josh Allen threw a couple interceptions. I think he was trying to force it downfield, just trying to make the home run. He probably, you know, been sitting around all summer and just excited to get back out there, but then he seems like he got it under control, and they're coming back to beat the Buffalo Bills. So I think they'll start getting some momentum. Now, this week's going to tell us a lot. Do you think Miami going down to Buffalo? Do you think Buffalo takes that?
I'll get a nod to Miami. I think I'm gonna get a nod to Miami. That offense is clicking. I'm talking about clicking.
I mean,
I'm
it's
talking
clicking,
about,
clicking.
yeah. Oof. Tyreek, Jalen Waddle didn't even play last game. Most likely he's probably gonna play. And seems that rookie running back, he went a little wild. It's gonna be interesting to see what he does. Still got Mostert. I think Jalen Ramsey. I think Jalen Ramsey will be back this game. I'm not sure. They haven't seen. Jalen hasn't played yet. They got their left tackle back. They're pretty much the best part of the offensive line. Armstead, their left tackle, and he was out there crushing people last week. So, and then you obviously got Tua, who's just got a whole lot of weapons to throw around too. And
and Tua is playing out of his mind right now. And I've been a fan of his since Alabama, and I think me and you even talked about this. It really hurt my heart if he wasn't going to be able to continue his career, because you never know about the concussions. But I think one thing, Miami made sure they had an offensive line and a scheme to block for him.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you got somebody who has concussion. Because I think we talked about this in one of our first podcasts. I said, they'll be fine, but if Tua gets in those first couple of games, gets hit a couple of times, and questions himself, then that's liable to cause a problem. But see, that didn't happen. And I think one thing everybody's missing too is Buffalo's going to be their fourth game. So they played in San Diego week 1. They last week they played in Denver, and they played in the Patriots. And I think they might have played that at home, but they're playing all these games on the road, and they're 3-0. And pretty soon they're going to be on that home schedule.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think they're going to maintain their record. So I look at Buffalo and Miami. I know they're the best team and the 5th best team this week. I think I'm watching that game this week, because I think that's probably the most intriguing game to me. Because we know what Buffalo is. I mean, but, to beat a man, you got to beat the man. So Miami's got to go down there, and they got to beat them, because if they don't beat them, everybody's going to say Buffalo's got their number. So we got our top 5. We had Miami, we have San Francisco, we have Philadelphia, we have Kansas City, who's back, and Buffalo. I'll say they're back too, because they're probably in the top 5 last year, most of the season. Who out there do you think's lurking? Who do we need to watch?
I would say Los Angeles, maybe. The Chargers, not the Rams, but the the Chargers. Chargers are a little bit interesting to watch. Their division doesn't seem as tough, because it's pretty much just Kansas City and Denver sucks, and obviously, and the Raiders aren't looking that good again this year. They don't look like they have anything going.
No, I think Garoppolo's got more interceptions than anybody in the NFL right now.
Yeah, and I say I'll pick 2 teams. I'll say the Chargers, and I'll probably go with Cleveland. I'll say Cleveland. Cleveland's a little bit interesting to me too.
Yeah, Deshaunte Watson got it together last week, and that defense, I think
they're the number 1 defense, if I'm not mistaken.
They could be. And Cincinnati, something like they might be getting it back together, but I still need to see another game or 2 out of them just to believe it. But, in that division, that's a tough division right there.
Yeah.
You got the Baltimore Ravens, you got Cleveland, Cincinnati.
They all play.
I think Uh,
They all play that tough brand, kind of that tough brand of football. Cincinnati not as
right.
much nowadays because you know, Burrow kind of slings the ball around, but that division has always been known for that tough brand of football.
Mm-hmm. You know, and some people are, you know, I did notice one thing on Monday night. Matthew Stafford can still
Oh
throw the
yeah, oh,
ball. I mean, if they can get everything together around him, you know, and that new player they got, that tight
yeah.
end, I think he's got almost 30 catches in like
Yeah.
3 games.
Cooper Cup
I
just
mean,
can't.
he's for
Cooper Cup
real,
just ain't. He just can't stay healthy.
right? Um, so they're interesting for me. I don't think they're going to be, but, you know, I enjoy watching them. Seattle, everybody's saying Seattle could be
Hmm.
decent. So we'll see. But as far as that, we're going to let y'all go. Thanks for watching our Power Ranking show, and we'll see you next week. Damian Lillard, like he's finally found a home. There's a trade. I mean, I know Jamel's upset because Miami's his team. He wanted him to go to Miami, and we talked about it all summer.
How could you, Damien?
But
How could you?
I